Welcome to our video about the top 15 games released in 1980. This decade marked an important moment in the history of video games, as many of the games that were released during this time became classics that are still beloved by players today. These games represent the evolution of technology and game design, and they are still enjoyable to play today. Like and subscribe to our channel for updates and exclusive content. Your participation is very important to us. Let's begin with our number 15 game on the list. Pac-Man Arcade, developed and published by Namco, Pac-Man is one of the most iconic and recognizable video games of all time. The game's objective is to guide the titular character, Pac-Man, through a maze while eating pellets and avoiding ghosts. The game was a huge success in the arcades and went on to become one of the best-selling video games of all time. 3D Tic-Tac-Toe is a game developed for the Atari 2600 console. It is a three-dimensional version of the classic game Tic-Tac-Toe, where players take turns placing X's or O's on a 4x4x4 cube grid in order to make a line of 4 in any direction. The game can be played against the computer or against another player. It features simple graphics and gameplay, making it suitable for players of all ages. Berserk is a classic arcade game released by Stern Electronics in 1980. The player controls a character named Fry who must navigate through a series of mazes while avoiding deadly robots. The objective of the game is to reach the end of each level while surviving as long as possible. The player can collect bonuses such as extra lives, increased firepower, and increased speed. The game is known for its fast-paced action and challenging gameplay. It was a commercial success and is considered a classic of the arcade era. Defender Arcade, developed and published by Williams Electronics, Defender is a classic arcade game in which players control a ship and must defend humanoids from abduction by aliens. The game's intense gameplay and challenging difficulty made it a popular choice in arcades. Missile Command is a classic arcade game from Atari, first released in 1980. The game is set in a post-apocalyptic world where players take on the role of a missile defense commander tasked with protecting their cities from incoming enemy missiles. Players use a trackball to move a crosshair around the screen and fire their own missiles to intercept and destroy the enemy's missiles before they hit the cities. As the game progresses, the difficulty increases, with more and more missiles coming at a faster pace and new types of enemy missiles that are harder to destroy. The game was well received at the time of its release and has since become a classic in the arcade gaming world. It has been re-released on various platforms, including home consoles, mobile devices, and PC. Space Panic is an arcade game released in 1980. The game is a platform game where the player controls a miner working on a space platform. The player must collect falling crystals while avoiding aliens that are trying to kill him. The player must also climb ladders to reach higher levels and avoid falling into the bottomless pit. The game features a two-player mode where players can compete against each other to see who can collect the most crystals. Space Panic is considered a classic arcade game and is still remembered and enjoyed by many players today. Warlords is a classic arcade game first released in 1980. Players control a castle and must defend it from incoming enemy fire. The game is played with a trackball controller and up to 4 players can play at once. The goal of the game is to use the castle shield to deflect enemy fire and protect the king and princess. Points are earned by destroying enemy fire and saving the king and princess. The game features colorful graphics and an exciting gameplay that made it a popular choice in arcades. Boxing is a sports game developed and published by Atari for the Atari 2600 console. It was released in 1980 and was one of the first boxing games to be released for a home console. Players take control of a boxer and must use the controller to punch and dodge their opponent. The game features a simple, one-button control system and the graphics are in black and white. The game does not feature any real-life boxers, but instead uses fictional characters. The game's objective is to be the first one to knock out the opponent. The game is considered a classic and is still enjoyed by many people today. Battlezone is a first-person tank combat arcade game developed by Atari and released in 1980. The game is set in a futuristic world where players control a tank and must battle enemy tanks and other obstacles to reach the end of each level. The game features 3D vector graphics and a first-person perspective, making it one of the first games to use this type of technology. The game was well received by critics and players, and it was later ported to various home consoles and computers. Battlezone was also the inspiration for many other first-person tank combat games, and it is considered a classic in the arcade and video game industry. Centipede is a classic arcade game developed by Atari and released in 1980. The game is set in a garden and the player controls a character named Harry, who is tasked with defending his garden from an invading centipede. The player must use a laser gun to shoot the centipede as it moves down the screen, avoiding obstacles such as mushrooms and spiders. As the player progresses through the levels, the centipede becomes faster and more difficult to defeat. The game also features bonus rounds where the player must defend against other insects, such as fleas and beetles. Centipede was a commercial success and is considered a classic of the arcade era. Dragster is a racing game developed by Activision for the Atari 2600 console. The game was released in 1980 and is considered one of the first racing games for the Atari 2600. The objective of the game is to race against other opponents in a drag race and be the first to cross the finish line. Players control their car using the joystick and can shift gears to increase speed. The game features a simple, 2D graphics and sound effects. Despite its simple gameplay and graphics, Dragster received positive reviews for its fast-paced action and challenging gameplay. The game is still considered a classic by Atari 2600 fans and is considered a cult classic among retro gaming enthusiasts. Moon Cresta is a classic arcade game released by Nichibutsu in 1980. The game is a space shooter where the player controls a spaceship called Moon Cresta, fighting against waves of enemies and bosses. The player has the ability to combine 3 ships to form a more powerful ship, called Moon Cresta 2. The goal of the game is to survive as many waves as possible, scoring points as enemies are defeated. The game was quite popular at the time of its release and was adapted for various gaming platforms, including the Atari 2600 and Commodore 64. Mystery House is a text-based adventure game developed by Online Systems and released for the Apple II in 1980. The game is considered to be one of the first graphical adventure games and a pioneer in the genre. The player takes on the role of a detective trying to solve a murder case in a mysterious mansion. The gameplay is based on text commands, such as look, open, and pick up, and the player must explore the house, interact with the characters, and gather clues to solve the case. The game features detailed graphics and a complex story that keeps players engaged. Mystery House was well received by critics and players and is considered a classic of the adventure game genre. Phoenix is a classic arcade game first released in 1980 by Amstar Electronics. The player controls a spaceship and must destroy enemy ships, birds, and UFOs while avoiding collision with them. The game features 5 levels, each with increasing difficulty. The player can earn bonus points by shooting down multiple enemies in a row. The game is known for its simple gameplay and challenging difficulty, making it a popular choice among arcade enthusiasts. Star Castle is an arcade game that was released in 1980 by Cinematronics. The game's objective is to destroy the central star castle by shooting it with a laser cannon that the player controls. The castle is protected by 3 rotating energy shields, and the player must destroy them before attacking the castle. The player's laser cannon is also protected by a shield, which can be replenished by collecting power-ups. The game becomes increasingly challenging as the player progresses through the levels, with the castle's defenses becoming stronger and more numerous. Star Castle was well received by critics and players alike and is considered a classic arcade game. And that concludes our countdown of the top 15 games released in 1980. We hope that you enjoyed revisiting these classic games and that they brought back fond memories. They represent a significant moment in the history of video games, and their impact can still be felt today. Thank you for watching, and we hope you will join us for our next video countdown.